Hi everyone, it's Dr. Odette Suter here, and just to get started, let me just do a few little housekeeping things here because I always have to cross post. So give me just 1 second and I will be right with you, okay? And that also gives people a little bit of time to kind of tune in. So let me just go to that. Let's just see, why is this not working? I should see that here. Ah, there we go. Hi everyone, I can see there's some people already, so let me just add something here into the comment section for you guys. Hi Phyllis. Yeah, let me know if you can hear me, and I would also love to know where you're from. So if you wanted to do that, and then let me cross post it to my holistic place. Just a few more minutes. All right. Wish I could do that ahead of time, but it never works that way. All right, that one's good. Here you go. And then feel free to already start posting in your questions into the comment sections, because I will definitely get to those. All right, so I think I'm good. Hi, everyone. Phyllis, John, Tamara, Jeannie. Oh my God, there's a lot of people coming. It's going faster than I can even read those. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here with you guys. It's starting to be spring here in the Chicago area, so I'm quite enjoying that. And of course, with spring also comes, the question about preventatives and heartworm preventatives and all that good stuff. So we will get started in just a couple minutes. I just want to allow people to join a little bit more. I know there have been a lot of people who, said they were coming. So I want to give everyone a little time. Yeah, it's very exciting to be here with all of you guys from Dallas. I know from Brooklyn, from the Chicago area, Canada, everywhere. So that's just really awesome. Hi, everyone. And we already have some questions as well. So that's very good. Hello. Oh, my sister is here too, and my niece. Hi, guys. It's good to see you. And Biscuit and Gatito. Those are the dog and the cat. So I'm hoping they're going to pay attention too and not, let themselves get stung by a mosquito. So start swapping. Very nice. It's really great to be here. All right. I think we should get started. So I want to start out with sharing my screen with you briefly to show you the basic, how heartworm is transmitted, because I find that there's a lot of confusion there where, some people aren't even aware how heartworm is transmitted. So I want to do that. So let me share my screen here. Hope it works. Oh, there we go. I'm doing Be Live because I think they do better caption for the video for those people who are a little hard of hearing. Can you let me know if you can actually see the screen? That would be great because I have two screens here and I'm not sure if it's showing. Actually, let me just go here. Not sure. Yeah, if you guys could maybe let me know about that, that would be great. If you can see my screen. And those people who are sharing the links for Ask the Vet, please stop. This is not the place. For my links, so just so you guys know, I'm a holistic veterinarian. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Odette Suter. I practice in the Chicago area, and I also do phone consults and such. Yeah, thanks about that. I will see what how that works with the screen. Anyway, I'm in the Chicago area, but I also offer phone consults for people who are not in the area. You can always find more about my practice here on my Facebook page, Odette Suter DVM, as well as my website, which is peakanimalhealthcenter.com. And I put that into the very first comment of this live, so you can find it there. I also have a book called What Your Vet Never Told You, where I go into the basics of what are necessary for health. And I also have an educational series, Animal Longevity Secrets Revealed, that goes into very much a lot of details, including heartworm, that you can access and watch on your own time. So today I will be talking a little bit about heartworm prevention, heartworm disease in general, how it comes about, and so on. So let me dive right in now. Let me just see if I can. Here we go. I guess, let me see. I guess we're just going to have to do split screen sharing. I think that's how that works. So let me just go here to the slideshow. I'm just going to enlarge this, and then hopefully that'll work out for you guys to see it well. Okay. Doesn't look like I can see myself at the same time. Anyway, so I hope you guys can now see my screen. Yeah, okay, very good. And are you guys able to also see the whole heartworm cycle here that I have? Let me actually put it in slideshow mode. That'll be even better. Okay. All right, very good. So heartworm cycle requires two hosts. It requires the mosquito and it requires the dog or cat. But we're going to stick a little bit more with the dogs right now in this Facebook Live because dogs are more prone to heartworm infection, whereas cats are a little bit more resistant. So I'm going to stick a little bit more with the dogs. So anyways, so we have the mosquito that stings a dog, and it will take up blood from the dog, and in that blood we have the little microfilaria, which are the little baby heartworm basically. So these microfilaria, they get taken up into the mosquito, and then from the mosquito, they have to develop from the stage of being the microfilaria, the larva stage 1, to larva stage 3, which is the infective larva. So it has to be a larva stage 3 in order to be infective for the dog. So if at any point the mosquito were to sting the dog in between, where the larvae haven't fully developed to the infective L3 stage, nothing will happen. So in any case, so the mosquito drinks his meal, the larvae develop to infective larva 3, and then at that point, if they get re-injected into the dog, so if the dog gets bitten by another mosquito, then these larvae go into the body of the dog. And it takes about 2 to 3 days where it's in the tissues in the skin area to then become larva 4. And from there on, it wanders through the body and goes into the lungs, into the arteria of the lungs, the pulmonary arteria. And that takes about 2 to 3 months for these larvae stage 4 to become young adults. And from there, it takes another it takes another 3 to 4 months for these adults to actually start to produce offspring. So you can kind of think of the microfilaria as being like the little embryo, and then the larva 3 maybe as the baby that comes out of the womb, and then it continues to develop and becomes a young adult, a teenager, and then 3 to 4 months later, it can start to produce offspring, and this offspring, those are the microfilaria, the little babies, and they can get taken up back into the mosquito. So this is how the heartworm cycle works. So if there are no mosquitoes around, there cannot be any heartworm transmission. And if there are no heartworm positive dogs around, and there are no heartworm positive mosquitoes, then there can also not be any transmission. And so anyway, so that's kind of the little bit of screen sharing I wanted to do with you guys. Let me just go back and get rid of that. A little smaller. There we go. Here we are. So I'm going to stop the sharing. Very good. All right. So I hope you were able to see it all. And again, these people, I see that a lot of people, Zahed and Jabed Khan, please stop posting. I would appreciate that. Your comments will be removed. All right, so that's the heartworm cycle. Now we also have to look at what are the conditions that are necessary for the transmission to occur. So for one, we obviously have to have mosquitoes, and we have to have the right climate. And the right climate and also consists of the right temperature, which I will get into in just a minute, but also the right humidity. So it requires humidity and the right temperature, and also the right temperature at the right length of time. As I mentioned, the mosquito must suck blood from an infected dog about 2 weeks prior to actually reinfecting the dog. The mosquitoes have to be females because those are the ones that will, get another blood meal. The mosquito, and there are a lot of different mosquito species, and okay, I see that there's a frozen feed. Is everybody else experiencing that too? Let me just double check. It seems like it's working, so it might be on your end. So anyways, the mosquitoes, there are about 70 different species of mosquitoes, but not all species of mosquitoes will allow the development of the heartworm. And we have to have the larvae stage 3 that has to get into the dog. And that's a little bit more challenging because the dog, the mosquito, when it stings the dog, it leaves a little droplet around the hole of where it stings. And that's in that little droplet, that's where the little larvae are. So the larvae don't get injected directly through the stinger into the dog, but they leave a little droplet with the little worms right there. And these little larvae, they have to go in through the little hole that was made by the stinger and get into the system. So you can see that there are a lot of different things that are necessary. Okay, I get the frozen screen thing here. I'm not sure what's going on, guys. It seems to be okay on my end. But anyway, so we have to have different things. We have to have temperature, we have to have humidity, we have to have the right mosquito, we have to have female mosquitoes, and we have to have mosquitoes that even have heartworm. The heartworm larvae have to be in the L3 stage to be infective, and the heartworm have to get from that droplet into the dog. So for example, if you live in a really dry environment, it's much less likely that the larvae are actually going to get through the hole because the droplet might dry off before that even happens. So you can see that it's not that easy for heartworm transmission to actually occur efficiently. So when we look at the climate, and I want to look at temperature a little bit more. So it takes the larvae from L1 to develop from L1 to L3 about 10 to 14 days at a temperature of about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 27 degrees Celsius. Anytime the temperature drops below 57 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 14 degrees Celsius, the development of the mosquito, of the heartworm larvae actually stops. So it doesn't occur. So anytime the temperature is consistently below 57 degrees Fahrenheit, there's not much going to happen. So you don't even have to start about thinking, to do heartworm prevention at that time. So even now in the spring, here in Chicago, it may get warm during the daytime a little bit, but then at night it gets all frozen again, and I haven't really seen any mosquitoes yet. So, as long as they're not around and the temperatures are low, there's really no need to even start with that. At a temperature of about 64 degrees Fahrenheit, it takes about a month for the heartworm larvae to become infective in the mosquito. And some mosquito species only live about 3 to 4 weeks. So again, even at 64 degrees, the chances are still relatively lower. But it depends. Some mosquito species, they live longer than 3 to 4 weeks. So there's definitely, a chance at that point. Let me see something here real quick. I will be... That is just really odd. Okay, anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by some of the comments here. All right, so that's what the temperature would, how temperature plays a role. So here in the Chicago area where, spring lasts for a little while and winter can last for a long time, usually we don't even have to start with any kind of preventative. And yeah, I think it's a troll. I know, Angela, I'm going to remove those later. That's annoying. Anyways, actually, let me just double check here real quick. Maybe I can block. Yeah, banned from stream. There we go. All right, that was easy. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of challenging when you get these weird things and then get distracted, lose your train of thought. So anyway, so in the Chicago area, we probably don't even have to start with heartworm prevention until closer to the end of May, even, depending on the year. It kind of varies, obviously. So we can just kind of keep track of temperature and go from there. And I do have a map here that I'm just going to briefly share. I'll probably put it into the comment section later, but there's a map where you can see, when to start heartworm prevention and when to stop, kind of based on your region. But again, if you kind of go with the temperature and mosquito presence and climate, etc., you can sort of figure it out on your own. But usually I start heartworm prevention about 30 to 45 days after the weather warms and the mosquitoes appear, because heartworm preventatives, they act retrospectively. So the word preventative is actually a bit of a misnomer. Hold on, there's another one I need to block. All right, here we go. It's a little bit of a misnomer because it doesn't really prevent. What happens is the mosquito bites the dog, the larvae go in, and then we give the heartworm preventative, and the heartworm preventative kills all the larvae that are right in there at that time. So it's not really preventing the mosquito from, stinging the dog, and it also doesn't prevent the mosquito from injecting the larvae into the dog. So heartworm preventatives, they really kill things. So they go in, they kill the larvae that are present, and then they leave the body. So heartworm preventatives like, HeartGuard, which is ivermectin, or Interceptor, and some of the other ones, they basically are in the system for about 72 hours, and then they're out of the system. So those are what would be the traditional, monthly heartworm preventatives. So maybe we should look at the different, well, let me give you a little bit more information on heartworm in general first. So dogs are much more susceptible. So when they get infected or injected with one of these larvae, they will have an infection, whereas cats, only about 60 to 90% will actually have an infection. So they are less prone to having that. Dogs can have a larger number of worms. They can have up to 30 or more heartworm, actual worms. They're actual worms, whereas cats usually have much less. Cats are also different because oftentimes they will only have one type of heartworm. Like, for example, only adults. I mean, only the males or only the females. And a heartworm, in order for them to be able to reproduce and make the heartworm, the microfilaria, there have to be males and females present in order for that to happen. So in cats, we have much less of those microfilaria, and even if they do get it, it's very transient. Whereas in dogs, these can persist for 1 to 2 years, even after the heartworm dies. The longevity of the worms themselves in cats is about 2 to 3 years. In dogs, they live about 5 to 7 years, and then they expire. And the organs that are most affected in dogs would be heart and lungs, whereas in cats, we have much more issues with the lungs. Clinically, the burden for cats is much higher than it is for, or the significance or the pathology is much more severe in cats than it is for dogs. And we also don't have very good treatment for cats at all. So mostly we just have to treat them with regular, with steroids just to kind of keep the inflammation down, but they don't tolerate the same heartworm drugs to kill them like dogs do. So when cats get heartworm, it's a little bit more of an issue, but they also tend to get much less heartworm, infection in general. So with heartworm preventatives, there are things that we need to look at. There are different kinds. There's the natural route, which I'll get to, and I know some people have already mentioned it in the feed here. If you go with a natural route, what I usually recommend is to test at least 3 to 4 times a year, just to be more proactive and if there was an infection, that treatment could be instituted more quickly. I don't usually recommend giving the Heartworm Plus products because they all contain unnecessary antiparasitics for the GI tract, and no dog needs to be dewormed for gastrointestinal parasites every month. I think that's crazy, especially because the problem we have with these preventatives, with these dewormers, is that parasites develop resistance to them, and we have huge issues with that in the large animal world, especially horses, sheep, cows, etc., where we almost have no dewormers available anymore that work. With dogs, we also see a lot more resistance with hookworms, for example, where we have a very hard time getting rid of those. So giving monthly antiparasitics for the GI tract is not ideal. Plus, it also affects the microbiome, which I've talked about at length in other Facebook Lives and such. I also recommend giving the heartworm preventative every 6 weeks, every 45 days, because that's enough to kill the larvae that got in. You don't want to extend it for too long, because the older the larvae get and the closer they get to becoming adults, the less the less susceptible they are to the heartworm drugs. So you want to still keep treating or catching them before they become more resistant to the treatment. I also recommend only giving it during mosquito season, because again, there's no transmission and there's no point in giving toxic drugs, because they have toxicity and they have side effects. So there's no point in giving those during the season where there are no mosquitoes. I also recommend using the lowest effective dose and doing a little bit of detox after the treatment, which you can, do a little bit of milk thistle, you can add a little bit of extra vitamin C, those types of things. I also don't recommend that, if you do give heartworm preventatives, traditional ones, like the drug ones, and you're also giving drug-based preventatives for fleas and ticks, I don't recommend giving that in the same week. So you want to definitely, at least give it a couple of weeks in between, and certainly don't give it on the same day, because that can potentiate the side effects. And again, both of those should really have a little bit of detox afterwards. And I did talk about flea and tick preventatives in another Facebook Live, so you can find that on my page as well in the video section. Another factor to take into consideration are certain dog breeds have an MDR1 gene mutation, which basically makes them more prone to having side effects to certain drugs. Some of those can be Australian Shepherds, Border Collies, English Shepherds, German Shepherds, etc. So you can kind of check, if your dog breed potentially has that gene mutation, and you can test for that. It's not that expensive, but those dogs tend to be more susceptible to certain drugs, especially the ivermectins. They do a little bit better with Interceptor, which is milbemycin oxime. So those are a little bit safer for the dogs that have MDR1 gene mutation. There are also daily heartworm preventatives that can be given to dogs that have autoimmune disease. They do better. And also for their, if their relatives have autoimmune disease, that's a better preventative for these dogs. It's a daily preventative, and you cannot miss a dose with those. So I'm just going to finish up with what's available on the traditional route, and then we'll talk a little bit about herbals as well. So don't worry, I'm not just doing like a drug promotion here. Yeah, I talked about that. So there is a third version of the drugs, which is an injectable. And that is something that I vehemently am opposed to, because it can cause very severe adverse effects, including death. And the name of the injectable is ProHeart. And ProHeart was actually taken off the market in 2004, but it has since then been silently reintroduced. At first, veterinarians had to give people a form to sign, that kind of told them about all the side effects that it could have. So they had to have people sign a consent form in order to be able to inject that. But that's kind of gone by the wayside as well. And to make matters worse, now they actually have a ProHeart that is good for 12 months. So the initial ProHeart was an injectable that lasted for 6 months, where you didn't have to re-inject or do anything about heartworm for 6 months. But now they have an even stronger version that has much more of the deadly poison in there than the initial one. And the problem with these drugs, the preventatives that stay in the system for longer, and that goes for some of the flea and for the flea and tick preventatives as well. Not so much for the traditional heartworm preventatives like HeartGuard and Interceptor, because they're only in for like 72 hours and then they're out. But flea and tick preventatives and ProHeart, they will stay in the system for the time that they're supposed to be there. So ProHeart 6 will stay in the system for 6 months, ProHeart 12 for 12 months. Brevecto will stay in the system for 3 months, which is a flea and tick preventative. So once these things are in the system, they cannot be removed. So if your dog has an adverse reaction to any of those, you're basically, pardon my French, a little screwed, or your dog is. So you definitely want to be sure not to have any of those. You want to have more short-acting drugs that's much safer, even though they can have cause issues as well. A lot of these drugs that do multiple things at the same time, they also have other ingredients that then potentiate possible side effects. So just to kind of give you a bit of an idea, HeartGuard, for example, or any of the ivermectins, TriHeart itself as well, they can cause liver problems, vomiting, diarrhea, loss of appetite, depression, lethargy, skin eruptions, seizures, tremors, paralysis, autoimmune disorders. In fact, I was just treating a dog who had immune-mediated hemolytic anemia, where basically the body starts to attack all the red blood cells, and if there are no red blood cells, there's no oxygen, and if there's no oxygen, there's no life. So they can get autoimmune disorders, thyroid problems, fevers, weakness, dizziness, cough, nosebleeds. I mean, the list goes on. including death. So you definitely want to make sure that you're aware of the different things that are possible with these drugs, so that you can make an informed decision. And I want to be really clear here. I am not promoting drugs, and I'm not promoting natural treatments. What I'm promoting here is information. I want you to have education so that you can then make a decision on what it is that you feel most comfortable with for your animals. Because in the end, it's all about risk and benefit. For example, if you live in Alaska, where there's no heartworm detected so far, you don't need to do anything. If you live in Florida, in Texas, Louisiana, any of those places where prevalence is really high, you may feel better about just doing the drugs and just helping your dog tolerate the drugs better, doing some detox and all the other things that kind of help stimulate the immune system and help to, promote good health, such as diet, healthy GI tract, detox, etc. And if you live in the Chicago area, where the prevalence is not so high, where most heartworm positive dogs are really imported from the South, you may choose a more holistic approach, more herbal, or more or not do anything at all. I mean, I have some clients, they just refuse to do anything, or they just choose not to. But in any case, whatever choice you make, if you're going with more of a holistic health, herbal choice, or doing nothing, then you definitely want to do some more testing. So anyways, all of these heartworm drugs, they can have side effects. And just because they didn't have an issue with the first few rounds of a drug doesn't mean that they can't have issues with it later on. So, and that can be a little challenging then to determine whether the heartworm preventative was actually causing some of the issues. But occasionally it can take months for animals to develop an intolerance to the drug. So last but not least, before I get to your questions, I want to just talk a little bit about testing, the different testing options, just so you have that information as well. So for heartworm testing, the general heartworm test that is run in vet offices is usually the antigen test that basically checks the antigens or particles from the adult female worm. So if your dog is infected with male heartworms, this test will not pick up. So the test can have false negatives in that regard. So just because it's negative does not mean that there are no heartworm there. It's still there's still a potential that there could be a heartworm, floating around in your dog. This heartworm test is commonly negative in cats because they only have few worms present, and again, and oftentimes those are males, so it's not a very good test for cats. It can certainly be run, and if it's positive, then but it's not the best one. And testing for the antigen with the antigen test has to be done about 7 months after the infection. And you remember the cycle. It takes about close to 6 to 7 months for the adults to be completely matured, and that's what the test picks up on. So in puppies, there's no point in starting testing before they are even 7 months old. And if your puppy, for example, is born in November, then you wouldn't start testing until almost a year after, because heartworm season doesn't start until the spring and ends about 6 months later, at least in the Chicago area. So then usually I test them about a year later. And again, depending on the level of prevention that you're choosing, I recommend 1 to 4 times a year of testing. There's also an antibody test, which will pick up on microfilaria, so it will pick up on the little babies. And you can also have your vet, get a little drop of blood, put it on their slide, and look at it under the microscope. If there are a lot of microfilaria, they will definitely be visible. Otherwise, I generally just send it out to test that. But that would only the antibody test itself, the test for microfilaria, will only show that the dog was exposed at some point in life, even if the worm has already died. So not the best test. The other, I should kind of rephrase that. So there's the antibody test that will check for antibodies, and then there's the microfilaria test that will actually, where you actually visualize the microfilaria, where you can see it under the microscope. That one is called the NOTS test. And the Heartworm Association is now actually recommending to run both the antigen test, which is the regular the regular heartworm test that's being done at vet offices in general, but they also recommend checking for microfilaria at the same time. But that's something that you can discuss with your veterinarian depending on the area you're in and the risk factors and so on, to discuss what kind of testing you want to do. In animals that already show signs of heartworm disease, with coughing, shortness of breath, exercise intolerance, etc., because heartworm affects the lungs. The heartworm, they live in the arteries that come from the heart, go into the lungs, so the pulmonary arteries. And so if they're and they create inflammation in there, so it will affect the lungs and create inflammation in the lung, blood vessels. If there are a lot of heartworm in there, if the burden is high, then we will also see more heartworm in the heart itself. So it's kind of like the overflow from whatever doesn't fit into the lungs kind of ends up in the heart. And if the overflow gets even worse, then it will start to back up through the vena cava into the liver, which that's the caval syndrome that's what we call it. And that's very, very severe. And, a lot of dogs will not survive that. So anyways, when we see when there's a higher burden, we can also use ultrasound and check the heart to see what's going, if you can see them, because the worms are visible with naked eye, that's how big they are. So they can also be seen on ultrasound. We can also take radiographs to see what's going on with the heart, because it can get enlarged if there are a lot of heartworm, if the burden is high. But we can also see changes in the lungs that would be visible on radiographs. So that would be the testing. In cases where there's a huge burden of heartworm, the best way to treat that is to actually remove them. And they can make a little incision into the jugular vein and then go in through there and start pulling the worms out. So that may be needed for those that are very much affected. So yeah, so that's about it for that. So I'm going to go over to your questions. Actually, one more thing that I do want to mention. A dog that has a very good immune system and will not be as prone to being affected by heartworm, and will be able to kind of keep it in check a little bit. But again, that depends on the amount of infestation. Again, areas such as Florida and Louisiana and such in the South, that would be much harder. But there are certainly other things that you can do. You can keep your dogs inside during the times of day when mosquitoes are out more. You can use mosquito repellents on the dogs, like essential oils and those types of things. You can make sure that you don't have too much standing water around in your neighborhood. There are different things that can be done in that regard too, to have little mosquito fish in ponds that will eat the larvae. There are also nematodes that can be sprayed in the yard that will also help decrease the number of larvae, because they will eat some of those. Garlic can be sprayed around. That can be a deterrent. We can also feed the dog some garlic, which will also help to deter that. And I go into more details on that in the Facebook Live I did last year on creepy crawlies. So you can go there for more on that. So, all right, now let me go to the comments. Here we go. Still in the high. Good morning, everyone. All right, here we go. Getting closer. Yeah, Ellen says it's definitely tick season in Hudson Valley. Yeah, well, ticks, they seem to never die off. And actually, I just learned this morning as I was reviewing some things is that some mosquitoes, adult mosquitoes, they will go through the winter. They will hibernate somewhere and then come out in the spring. So, uh, yeah, all these pesky things. All right. Michelle, what do you think of the magnetic tag from Only Natural Pet for flea, tick, and heartworm protection? Well, I think for everything pest related, it takes a bit of a multi-pronged approach. I don't think that one thing alone will ever work, especially when it comes to fleas and ticks, because they are quite, well, strong. They don't like to die. Well, none like to die, but in any case, so I think it requires more than just that. But again, it depends on which season that you're in, which climate you're in. All right, next question. Candy Ellison, will bringing lots of heartworm positive dogs into a non-heartworm area allow it to get established? Yes, definitely. So all it takes is one heartworm positive dog that has not yet been treated and still has microfilaria in the body to be in your neighborhood, for the mosquitoes in your neighborhood to pick up on that and then potentially infect your dog. So yes, definitely. So it might be worth kind of knowing a little bit what's going on in your neighborhood as well. But generally, dogs that are coming from the south, they are often treated by the rescue before they are released. But that may not be the case for those that are fostering heartworm positive dogs. They will kind of be spread out. So you just definitely it can happen anywhere, and that's why in the Chicago area we have more heartworm than we used to, just because of the dogs that have come from the south. All right. Kathy Boyce, it's not spreading dog to dog. No, unless you take blood from one dog and inject the blood from a heartworm positive dog and inject it into the blood from a heartworm negative dog, there's no transmission. And even then, you would have to, catch the larvae, which I'm not sure that you'd even be able to catch those because they are lodged more in the arteries of the lungs and not in the general blood circulation. So it would be a little bit harder. But in the process of them becoming, moving, there could be the potential actually. Now that I think of it, but yeah, there's definitely no spread dog to dog unless through transfusion, and I'm pretty sure they check that if you ever have to have a blood transfusion for your dog. They do test for that. Nobody likes mosquitoes. No, definitely not. Although they don't seem to like me very much, so that's always good. Although when I'm the only one around, they do still like me. What about tropical weather countries? Asks Chloe. Yeah, they are definitely more. If you have mosquitoes all year round, you also have the potential for heartworm. All year round. All right. Okay, Gabby, in Pennsylvania, where I live, the mosquitoes are really terrible to the point that sometimes just avoid going outside. Yeah, I mean, in the summertime, in my neighborhood, I don't go out past 6 or 7, depending on where the sun is, because otherwise I get eaten alive when I try to water my garden. And same early in the morning. All right. What kind of heart prevention shall we use? I think I covered that. So in the end, you have to know your choices. Have to know the pros and cons of all of them, and potential side effects, and then base your decision on what you feel comfortable with. It's really a decision that only you can make. What would you recommend for areas that are always above 30 degrees Celsius? If I lived in an area like that, I would definitely do some prevention, and I would like to maybe talk about the herbal real quick, since that's the next question as well. Amber Naturals, which is an herbal company, they make a product called HWF for Heartworm Free. And that's an herbal formula that can be used as a preventative and also for treatment. So I've had a few dogs that came to my practice already on the HWF because they were diagnosed for heartworm. They were heartworm positive, and they actually cleared the infection with that HWF. This one can also be used as a preventative, as I mentioned. And depending on where you live, you would use it 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off. In areas where heartworm prevalence is lower, 1 week on, 3 weeks off is sufficient, according to the company. Although on the label it will always say 1 week on, 1 week off. And that would be the maintenance dose. So again, there's no real official study that has been done to prove effectiveness, but anecdotally, it works. I mean, I've seen it in a few of my patients. I don't treat a lot of heartworm positive dogs because the prevalence is lower in Chicago, and usually the dogs that came from the south are already treated with traditional heartworm drugs, and so by the time I get them, it's already been cleared. So I don't see a lot of them, but I have some colleagues in Texas in particular who have used this product a lot and have done, been going really well, and they've cleared a lot of infection that way. So HWF is more of like as the preventative, but it's also more of a slow kill type of process if you use it to kill heartworms. But it can take several. It takes I can't remember how many months, but at least 9 months of using it to get rid of the heartworm, positiveness. But it's a slow kill method where it causes a lot less issues for the dog. And you also don't have to restrict the dog's exercise, because with traditional treatment of heartworm positive dogs, they use imidacide, which is a drug that basically kills the adults quickly. And anytime you have something dying in a blood vessel, there are particles that are going to be floating around, and these particles can get stuck in the blood vessel and cause an embolus, basically, which that then becomes a life-threatening issue. So with traditional heartworm treatment for, heartworm disease itself, not prevention, for the disease itself, the traditional treatment can be very challenging for the animals, and you have to restrict their exercise for many weeks to kind of allow the body to get rid get rid of all these particles and clean up. So it can be a very challenging treatment, not just because it's hard on the system, but also mentally it can be very difficult, especially if it's a younger dog who's full of energy. If you have to restrict them, their exercise, which is basically pretty much cage rest, that's very challenging. So with the HWF, you can do it slower. But again, it very much depends on the degree. If you have a dog with a high burden, then that's a different story again. So, there's no clear-cut answer for any of those. All right, and then CoQ10 and cancer. Terry, well, that's a different subject entirely, but certainly CoQ10 can also be used for the heart and to support the heart. All right, and then Janet, good morning from New York. My 7-year-old golden tested positive for heartworm in 2017 on routine testing. It was a shock as I felt insulated because of my cold climate and healthy lifestyle. I got her through slow kill, but lost her to a sudden cardiac event afterwards. I am so sorry to hear. I am so worried about heartworm now and would love proven anecdotal information about natural preventatives. I'm now using ivermectin every 6 weeks during mosquito season. Well, Janet, you're a perfect example of making a choice based on what works for you. You know, if anyone is constantly worried about their dog getting heartworm and stressed out about that, then it may be better to use a drug and use that as a preventative, and then just help to support the body as best as possible to tolerate that drug. Because if you're stressed, your dog is stressed, and with stress, we have a decrease in immunity. And with a decrease in immunity, they will be more prone to infections in general, but also not do as well with a potential heartworm exposure. So I think it's very important that you do what works for you, you know, and that you make a choice, and nobody should really push you one way or another. And I hope I'm making that very clear, that I am also not saying you should do one or the other. You have to do what feels right to you based on information. So if you're worried about heartworm, then, you know, do what you need to do to, you know, make your life good, because in the end, it's about quality of life, not just for your animals, but for yourself as well. Like Malaysia is, you know, there's mosquito season all the time. Yeah, I think I sort of covered that. But basically, I mean, if the season is all the time, then you would do some prevention all the time. How to check for this gene? I'm assuming you're talking about the MDR1 gene mutation. That's a genetic test that you can do. I believe Embark does test for that one as well. Usually people already come with their tests done. I don't usually do that. It's a saliva test. I think you can even buy it on Amazon. Georgia may have been diagnosed in cool weather, but didn't she say something about could have been infected in warm weather? Yeah, because again, the testing of heartworm with the traditional heartworm test that we do, that one is only shows, you know, tests for the female adults, and it takes 6 to 7 months for these female adults to be mature enough for the test to pick up on. So that's why oftentimes we will check you know, heartworm in the wintertime, or in, you know, or early spring, to kind of see what happened the season before that. Oh yeah, Tamara, thanks for that information. Embark and wisdom tests for MDR1. And Donna, recommendations in Florida for natural ways. I don't want to use any of the medications that can hurt my dog. The only one that I'm aware of would be the HWF from Amber Naturals. But I know there are other herbalists that have their own concoction. I know Will Falconer also uses more herbal preventatives that way. But the HWF is the most common one that's used. And then again, make sure that you also do a little something to keep the mosquito population down in your area, and decrease the risk of being stung by a mosquito. All right. Very conflicted. Yeah, I know it's not an easy choice. It's just like vaccines too. You know, there are no easy choices in life. You know, everything has risks and benefits, and that can make it a little bit challenging to decide, you know, what you want to do. And you know, sometimes it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, it's a tough choice. I hear you guys. I do. Chloe, not sure if garlic works, because I heard from Dogs Naturally magazine garlic works like ivermectin, which is Heartgard's ingredients. Yeah, I don't know about that, but garlic definitely can be a bit of a repellent. Garlic also helps the immune system. It is known to be a bit of a anti-parasitic. Whether it actually works for heartworm that are in the heart, I don't know. There's also, in one of the videos that I watched a while back, one of the human health practitioners said that you should use diatomaceous earth for heartworm. And I'm like, no, diatomaceous earth doesn't even get close to where the heartworm actually would be. So that definitely doesn't work for heartworm. So diatomaceous earth is not a heartworm preventative. Just in case you saw that video, I think it was from the some cancer series in the human field that they did, and they talked about animals too, and they just asked the wrong guy to give information on heartworm prevention for dogs. Tamara, yes, avoid dusk environment, no standing water and mosquitoes, and oh yeah, bat houses. That's a good idea. That's very good. I have some clients that have bat houses in their yard to kind of keep the population down. Okay, yeah, Julie, I just mentioned the heartworm preventative, the natural one. Is Interceptor a better option over HeartGuard? Some veterinarians say that Interceptor is a little less toxic and a little bit better tolerated, but again, it really depends on the dog. I mean, every drug has potential for side effects. Every herb as well, too. I mean, just because it's an herbal remedy doesn't mean it's 100% safe. I guess one thing I should mention about the Amber Naturals HWF, it is beef flavored. So if your animal has a sensitivity to beef, it would not be a good option. I'm hoping that maybe eventually they'll come out with a different one, but I think the flavoring is probably necessary because it probably doesn't taste all that great. Like a lot of herbal remedies don't taste all that good. A lot of these other drugs like Interceptor, HeartGuard, any of the ones that are chewable, they will also contain flavoring. Some of them will have corn, soy, beef, pork. Well, actually, there's one, I think it's Interceptor. It says that it's beef flavored, but when I actually called them, they said it was made from, the flavoring was pork and soy. So go figure. So it might be worth just checking with the company if you have any questions. If you have a dog that's sensitive, make sure that you know what the inactive list of ingredients is, just to make sure that you don't inadvertently give them something on a regular basis that is stimulating the inflammation in the gut because they're sensitive to it. Some of these drugs can also be compounded to be, anti-allergenic or hypoallergenic. So if that's the case, definitely, check with your vet and see what other options there are. All right. Terry, I will post a link of the map later. It's online too. You can find it, but I will post a map later, and I have to go find it. For a dog, Peter, for a dog that travels to various states and campgrounds, what are some good natural preventatives? There's no way to minimize mosquito exposure. Well, the only natural preventative I'm aware of would be the HWF from Amber Naturals. But if you work with a holistic vet, they may have some other options for you. What about using heartworm nosode, Tanya? It may just help support the immune system of the dog and make them a little bit better able at fighting them. But I don't know that by itself it would be enough. If I lived in Florida with a dog, I probably wouldn't rely on that. In any case, with anything natural that hasn't been studied and where they can show that, things are working, I would still, test very frequently. But even so, even with the regular drugs, now they are starting to find that there is some resistance happening in certain areas where, heartworm, the heartworm itself doesn't, or the larvae don't really get killed anymore by traditional heartworm preventatives, and I predict that will actually get worse over time because we see that with other parasites and bacteria and viruses, including COVID. That the more pressure an organism has, the more it will mutate to be able to survive whatever it's being threatened by. That's why it's so important to maintain health, because parasites, viruses, and bacteria are everywhere. We're always exposed to those. But not everybody gets sick from something that's going around, right? There's some people who are getting sick from COVID, and others, they get exposed, but nothing happens. And why is that? It's because their immune system is working really well. So one of the most important natural preventatives is really to give them a good diet, to make sure that their gastrointestinal tract is healthy with all the microbiome, all the microbes in the microbiome, because they are running the ship. And feel free to go through my previous Facebook lives on those subjects. I also recommend regular detox. I recommend maintaining balance of the nervous system. I use chiropractic work for that, and then also plenty of exercise. Because the more exercise an animal gets, obviously it depends on its state of health, the healthier it can be. So those are all the things that you can do to help, prevent heartworm and make your dog a bit more resistant to things. Because the thing with any parasite, virus, or bacteria, they're really not that interested in killing the host. Because if they kill the host, then that basically means extinction for them as well. So if the host is healthy, it should be able to actually tolerate what it's being exposed to as far as pathogens go. All right. What mosquito repellent? I would recommend you watch my Creepy Crawlies Facebook Live, Patricia, for more information on that. Janet, my 15-year-old compromised golden never. Oh, I think I already went through that one. He never had symptoms. Okay, I'll have to look at that one a little bit more. Yeah, I'm not sure what slow kill method you were using that led to her sudden demise. I know that slow kill with drugs it can certainly be more difficult because of the damage not being repaired. I know with Amber Naturals protocol, they work a lot on helping to restore the treating the heart, helping to support the heart, and supporting the kidneys, and supporting the immune system. So it doesn't just work at killing things; it also helps to support the body. So definitely, if a dog is heartworm positive, we should definitely work on supporting the heart with good nutrients and such, and supporting the lungs and the kidneys, and obviously the liver as well. So it's really more than just killing the parasite. It's also helping to support the body in the process and afterwards. Gabby, I know this might be the right place to ask, but I would like to have a phone. Oh yeah, consult. Yeah, we can certainly do that. I will touch base with you. Yeah, I know it's a lot of information, and I just want to remind you guys, I have a video series as well where I go through, heartworm, but I also talk about diet, and all the other things that I just mentioned. So it's in the first comment, and you can find it on my website as well, the link. So if you want more information to kind of be able to digest all of this a little bit more, please go there. All right. How important is it to have a heartworm test done before you start preventative? I stopped during winter months. It certainly is a good idea to do that, especially if your dog has a lot of microfilaria, which are the little babies, because some of these heartworm preventatives, the drugs, they can actually kill these babies relatively quickly, which that can cause a reaction within the dog, where it creates an inflammatory reaction. So you definitely want to be careful if that's the case. And if you wanted to make sure, you can always run the regular heartworm test and the NOTS test, which checks for the microfilaria burden. And that gives you a bit of a better idea of, how significant the infection is. There is one heartworm preventative that can be used without doing testing prior, which would be, let me double check because I already forgot. I looked it up this morning, but I already forgot again. Oh, it was Advantage Multi has moxidectin, and that one can be used. I'm not sure if there's an Advantage without the multi. I don't use these drugs very much, so I can't remember now. But anyways, that one can be used. It's a topical, and that can be used when there's a high burden of microfilaria because it would kill them slower, more slowly. And then Jing Tang. I'm currently fostering a heartworm positive dog who just started treatment 1 month ago with doxy, steroids, and monthly HeartGuard. The foster dog is not exhibiting any cough or shortness of breath, so I guess it's a mild case of heartworm. My own dog is not on any heartworm prevention, tested negative via antigen test last month. I live in Malaysia, which is a tropical country. Should I worry that a mosquito might bite the foster dog and transfer the larvae to my own dog? Yes, there is definitely a risk, although when a dog is treated with doxycycline and a heartworm preventative, the microfilaria, they can still be taken up into the mosquito. So they can still continue to breed, and the microfilaria can be taken up into the mosquito and develop into larvae 3, but it seems that once the larvae 3 is being injected into another dog, they don't actually develop all the way to adults. So the risk is definitely lower, but since you're in a tropical climate, the risk is there whether you have a heartworm positive dog in your family or not, because I would assume that there are probably some in your surrounding as well, in your neighborhood. Allison, is there a concern about heartworm building resistance when using slow kill methods? Well, the adult heartworms, they're quite resistant or not very susceptible to heartworm preventatives in the slow kill. That's why it takes longer to kill them. So eventually it will kind of wear down on them. I don't know that they've tested, resistance in that regard, and if it builds resistance, I'm not sure about that. Jason, what do you think of using a product like Revolution for heartworm prevention? Well, it's just one of the options, the drug options. Again, all of them can have side effects and risks, and you have to kind of determine for yourself what works. Joe, we adopted our now 2.5 GSP, German Shorthair Pointer. I don't do well with abbreviation from. In 2019, we live in Atlanta. She had her annual checkup and tested negative. Just recently, she tested positive, both in-office tests and sent to lab. We have had her on HeartGuard since she arrived. Our vet believes she may have been infected before we got her. That is very possible because sometimes they can also be negative on the test and can be false negative, because if the body is mounting enough of an immune response to the heartworm itself, it will kind of bind the antigen with the antibodies, and then the test will not pick up on that. So it's like, you have one magnet, and then you test that magnet, and you can get some magnetism from that magnet. But then if you take another magnet, it will attach to it, and then the magnetism will be different. Well, that may not be the best explanation, but it kind of stuck. You have the antibody and the antigen stuck together, and the test cannot pick up on that. So it can have false negatives that way. So it's very possible that it was infected before you even got your dog. She's currently on treatment, taking doxycycline, and doxycycline is used to kill Wolbachia, because heartworm parasites, they also come with a bacterium called Wolbachia, and Wolbachia needs to be killed ahead of time before even doing the heartworm killing the heartworm themselves. Just because, again, they can cause more inflammation if you kill everything all at the same time. And it will also make the heartworm and the, a little bit more sterile, because Wolbachia has some influence on the reproduction of, or the ability of heartworm parasites to reproduce and make microfilaria. So it's very important to use that ahead of time. And that's why, for example, for Amber Naturals also uses another herbal remedy first, and I can't remember, I think it was Vibactra, in order, before even starting with the slow kill with the HWF, just to make sure that the Wolbachia gets eliminated. Yeah, so Joe, you can certainly check in with Amber Naturals. They have a ton of information. They can also talk to you about what you've already done and how to go from there and such, because that's their specialty. That's what they do. I'm not the best person to ask because, again, I don't treat a lot of heartworm positive dogs at all. In dry Scottsdale, Arizona, mosquito season is about 4 to 5 months long. So when would you test? Again, it depends on what you're doing, but heartworm adults, you can find them test-wise at 6 to 7 months after infection. Lori, if I feed garlic and add Amber's Naturals HWF, would that be too much garlic since HWF includes garlic? Well, when it comes to garlic, you'd have to feed a dog multiple bulbs of garlic for that to even be toxic. So most likely not, but I don't know how much garlic you use. Veronica, what can we spray in the yard for mosquitoes? I recommend watching the Creepy Crawly Facebook Live. I go into that more there. Detox Choices, I'm assuming after giving a heartworm preventative, a drug one, I use 5-leaf pet botanicals detox. I like that. I just use that twice a year for my patients. It's like a 3-week sort of detox protocol, but it can certainly also be used after each application of heartworm preventative for a few days. You can also give a little bit of extra vitamin C, because vitamin C will also neutralize a little bit of the toxins, although you might want to wait for the heartworm preventative to take action before you do that, because you don't want to kill, eliminate that or destroy the drug, because then it doesn't do anything. Yeah, just liver support, and then food, good diet and all that good stuff. Patricia, any mosquito repellent? Yeah, same. If you could go into Facebook Lives, cover that. Janet St. Pierre, Sustenance Herbs sells a tincture for heartworm prevention as well. Oh, that's good to know. I will have a look at them. Betsy, I get it on Amazon. Used Arbico. Yeah, as far as Amazon, it's very convenient and gets here quickly and all that. But with Amazon, unfortunately, there are so many sellers on Amazon, and not all of them have kosher practices, where there are cases where they've basically opened up whatever and taken out whatever was in there and replaced it with something else. Sometimes it just sits in warehouses forever. Not necessarily heat controlled properly. So I personally do not recommend getting anything that goes into the body from Amazon. Even with shampoos and stuff like that, I would be a little more careful, but definitely nothing ingestible from Amazon. That's just my policy. All right, still confused about testing protocol when I stop heartworm preventatives during the winter. I understand the need to test before resuming preventatives. Could you please clarify? I think I probably did. And I also put a link in the very first comment, Jael, where you can actually, access my full video on the heartworm that goes into all these details, more, maybe a little more systematically than what I managed to do today. Julie Jacobs asks, are there side effects from HWF? Anything can cause issues. So definitely don't rule it out if you see something that's not normal in your dog. Georgia, do you think no matter what method you use, natural or meds, a spring liver cleanse, let's say with dandelion, is a good idea? Yes, I usually don't saute mine. I just stick it in the blender and drink it as a smoothie. I would also recommend that for the animals, because anytime you cook things, it takes away some of the nutrients. Although with CBD, that's a different story. So anyways, I'm more into raw. Okay. Nicole, I work for a holistic integrative vet. First thing we address in heartworm positive dogs is inflammation with herbal combo and immune system as well. We have high heartworm positive. We haven't had great success with HWF. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I've heard different stories. It certainly needs to be researched more. I wish they did a real study. But thanks for sharing your experience. Michelle, what do you think about all natural sprays? Like, yeah, there are a lot of sprays for, that are really good. You just kind of have to probably have different ones and see what works best and kind of do a little bit of experimenting yourself. Michelle, you also say that you're very afraid of chemicals, as one of your babies wound up with a lifelong seizure issue from being on them years ago. Definitely, if your dog has seizures, you want to stay away from most of the traditional heartworm preventatives, because they can actually trigger seizures. Unfortunately, that seems to kind of go missing sometimes in the communications at the vet. Same with rabies vaccine. So if your dog has seizures, do not give them a rabies vaccine, because it can make it worse. All right, there are sprays, you have essential oils. What is the everyday pill you talked about? Is it safer? Again, it's a drug and every dog will respond differently. But let me just find the name of it, because I have a hard time pronouncing that one. I don't know why. It's Filaribit or Dimitrol. That one is the daily one that can be used for dogs that have autoimmune issues, or their parents have autoimmune issues. All right, so I think, what do you think about the product called Scram? I think that's more of an internal parasite, anti-parasitic. I'm not sure if it would work for heartworm. If you have a dog that tests positive but has no symptoms, would you recommend an ultrasound? Probably not, but it never hurts. That way you get a baseline. All right, I know there's a lot more questions here, but I want to kind of stop here, because we've been going on for over an hour, and I want to let you guys get back to your Sundays. But it's been an absolute pleasure having all of you guys here. The questions you've had asked are incredible. It just warms my heart to see how informed you guys are and how much you think, and just the intelligence, and also obviously how much you care about your animals. It's always so nice to see. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and feel free to share it with your family and friends. I think this is information that needs to go out there because, we live in a world where there's a lot of information available and also a lot of fear. And I am very much into promoting information so that we can make informed decisions that are based on actual facts and not necessarily just on fear or nonchalance, which would be the other extreme. So if you could please share it, on Facebook and everywhere else you want, that would be so awesome. And again, thank you so much and have the most wonderful Sunday. And if you like spring as much as you do, as I do, then go out and enjoy it. It is beautiful in Chicago right now. So anyways, I love you guys all. Have a great Sunday. Bye.